I want to ask you some specific questions about a particularly thorny issue. This is the paid parental leave scheme that the government's proposing. Less than a year ago, as everyone knows, the Prime Minister wanted that paid parental leave scheme that gave new mothers 6 months' leave. Now, if women use both the government and their employers' schemes, which was always the intention that they complement each other, they're now being accused of fraud by Joe Hockey. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, they're not being accused of fraud.
No, that was the phrase. It's basically fraud to use two different schemes.
Well, look, no, we're not saying there is fraud at all. What we're saying is that there's double dipping, which is basically that somebody who's on a generous employer-supported paid parental leave scheme is also able to get the benefit of the government scheme. Now, where the
that was always the intention, wasn't it? That was always the intention of that policy, was that then you'd end up with more than just 18 weeks.
No, the intention, as you know, was to extend the paid parental leave scheme to 6 months and to make it more than the minimum wage. But we've taken that off the table and we've decided to put some of that spending elsewhere, namely in childcare. But the point is, if you have an employer scheme which is below the government 18-week at minimum wage, then you can access the government support. Now, a lot of thousands of women do that every year. But if you get an employer-based scheme which is more generous, and 34,000 women currently do that, then you will no longer be able to access the government scheme. And we think that's only fair to the taxpayer, because, Virginia, you can't have it on the one hand calling on us to find savings and head to a surplus, and on the other hand saying, well, we're wrong to try to find those savings where there's something like double dipping occurring.
But that was the point I was making, was that was always the intention of the original policy, was that the two would work together and that therefore a new mother would end up with simply more than 18 weeks at home. You're a new father. I mean, you surely must know that a mother spending more than 18 weeks at home with their newborn is pretty important, and the point of the two schemes operating side by side was that you ended up with something closer to 26 weeks. Don't you see that as an important thing?
Well, look, Virginia, I supported the Prime Minister when he put forward a more generous paid parental leave scheme, because the World Health Organisation had actually called on the fact that, you know, mothers need 6 months to bond with their children, and they do need that support. But clearly there was a lot of opposition to it, and we decided to recalibrate our package of measures, and now we're investing more in childcare and we're maintaining the existing paid parental leave scheme.
But this goes, don't you think, to the problem that you've got with selling this budget and the budget narrative. Last year it was all about providing that great support for mothers at home. Now you're rounding on women and accusing them of double dipping if they're simply getting access to two schemes as they were always supposed to in the first place. Last year's budget narrative was battled and lost on the issue of fairness. Aren't you just about to repeat that mistake this year?